into the American Midwest. Huntington bankers with one mission, to understand how people made sense of money. And that's how we met Dontel.
How do we control cash flow? Calendar, dates marked for invoices, when payroll hits. It's messy, but it gives us a sense of what's coming.
And that's how we came up with a tool that helps businesses forecast cash flow.
Welcome to the Best of Beaver County, presented by St. Barnabas, a weekly segment dedicated to putting the focus on the amazing things and the amazing people behind them in Beaver County. The Best of Beaver County is sponsored by and content is provided by St. Barnabas. The show airs every Thursday from 11 to 11:30 on WBVP, WMBA, 99.3 FM, and Facebook Live. Now, with no further ado, let's welcome host Mike Romigh to introduce today's program.
Good morning. I'm Mike Romigh, and welcome to the Best of Beaver County radio show on the St. Barnabas Radio Network. Today in Allegheny, Beaver, and Butler counties, St. Barnabas offers a full continuum of care for our residents and patients. This includes luxurious retirement, living, personalized living assistance, and hands-on skilled care in our nursing center. Additionally, the St. Barnabas Medical Center offers the following health services to the community and our residents: a full dentistry, home health and home care, hospice care, and palliative care. The St. Barnabas Health System continues to be focused on the needs of our community and our residents now and in the future. Building upon its heritage, St. Barnabas lives out its mission of caring for people through individual and institutional services which help the health, education, and social needs of others. Men and women are invited to join St. Barnabas in the work of continuing Christian caring, healing, and teaching as we, along with St. Barnabas, bear witness to its founder's reminder, God is able. We look forward to having insightful conversations benefiting you and your family's well-being. The intent of our radio show is to introduce you to successful people whom are having a positive impact in the greater Pittsburgh communities. Each month, we will bring you topics of interest to enlighten, entertain, and educate you. St. Barnabas offers solutions to healthy living by providing residents, patients, and our communities with opportunities to enhance their daily lives. Exercise and physical activity is always beneficial for us in a lot of ways over all the age groups. As we continue to hear about heat indexes, humidity levels, and mold counts, we may need to take precautions when certain activities take us outside. Here to talk with us today about the best approach to prepare, along with the benefits and risks associated with increased physical and especially outdoor activities, is no other than Jeff Bost. Jeff, welcome back to the show.
Mike, it's always great to be here.
Good to be talking with you, as always. We learned so much from your visits here on the program. We seem to be hearing a lot about environmental factors, more often now than before. People start talking about hurricane season in April. It just seems to be all over the map. We all know what pollution is because we can see it. Let's get into the conversation today by talking about ozone. What is ozone?
Well, Mike, I'd like to just talk a little bit about the weather. I mean, everybody talks about the weather. It's funny you talk about hurricanes. I mean, it's always on the news. We always read about it on the internet or the newspapers about weather, and it really impacts our lives, whether it's related to rain or snow or hot weather. And you're discussing ozone, which is a type of pollution. And pollution is sort of a mixture of weather and man-made activities. So when you think about pollution, it could be particulate matter, it could be ozone, it could be other toxins that are in the air. But it also has a lot to do with the weather, whether the air is moving, the heat around the weather, as far as if it's a high temperature, that causes the pollution to be more toxic to us. So there's all kind of weather-related things to pollution, and I think that's why, the weatherman got relegated to talk about pollution and probably started with pollen counts and things like that. But it really is a mixture of what humans do and what the weather does as far as the lethalness or the non-lethalness of pollution.
Yeah.
You wanted to talk about ozone, which is a great topic because this summer I think we've had more ozone alert days than any other that I remember. I don't know if that's factually true, but I believe I've heard it quite often this summer. And it's related, again, to weather. High heat is one of the factors that precipitate it. But ozone is an oxygen molecule with 3 oxygen molecules tied together. And we've heard a lot about the ozone layer way up high in the stratosphere protecting us from UV radiation, which is a cancer-causing wave of sunlight that can penetrate our skin and induce mutations or cancer cells. So we really want the ozone layer in our upper levels of our stratosphere to have plenty of ozone to protect us from those damaging light rays. However, when ozone is down amongst us, when we're breathing ozone, it can have a very toxic effect. So there's a good ozone and a bad ozone that we need to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Well, you talk about high intensity and heat, and we see these wildfires out west, and they don't impact us here, or at least we don't think they impact us here. Is there any carryover effect from, all the burning that we see out west in coming in our direction? How does it work out in that respect? And at what point will people take it seriously?
Well, I think it's the old chicken and the egg. Oftentimes, the fires are related to high heat and high winds, which is related to the weather, and then the subsequent smoke has its own toxicity and pollutants that come from that. So it's all sort of tied together again with the weather. Smoke, whether it's out west or from a volcano somewhere in Iceland, can have worldwide impacts. Volcanoes, for example, that send ash up in the air can actually lower the world's temperature, and we've seen that in decades of the past. But smoke and other pollutants that we see from burning coal and oil and natural gas are really what contributes mostly to ozone, because nitrogen is one of the compounds, organic compounds, found in the organic energy sources that we use. Coal, as you recall, oil, and natural gas all have organic plant-based production, meaning they're compressed under the ground and they change and liquefy or turn into gas or into a solid, but it originally was a plant form, which is carbon as well as nitrogen. And so when that's burned, that gets in the atmosphere, and that precipitates the production of ozone. So if the climate's right, the weather's hot, the wind isn't blowing, that produces a lot of ground-level ozone, which really is lethal. There's probably, worldwide, as far as the number of deaths from pollution, whether it be particulate or ozone or accommodation, is about 9 million deaths a year in the world. Now, the U.S. has something to say about that in the sense that they contribute to the number of deaths, but we aren't seeing the number of deaths, fortunately, that we used to see back 30 years ago, 40 years ago, when we burned coal just without any containment or without any scrubbers on the smokestacks and so on. So we've actually dropped our death rate to some degree in the U.S.
Is this then a new phenomenon? And in terms of it becoming a political football, you can say, it's not costing us as many lives as it did 30 or 40 years ago, and then people say, see, we solved the problem, and then we can go back to our old habits.
Well, politics is all about priorities. So if pollution is a priority, if you or a family member or older, if you have underlying lung condition, when you go outside when there's an ozone alert, you're going to have trouble breathing, you're going to get short of breath very quickly, and it's going to cause damage to your lungs. You're going to need more medicine, and some people are hospitalized, require oxygen. So that would be a priority for someone in that category. So politics are one part of it, but individuals are another part. And what you bring to the table, if you will, as far as your underlying lung conditions, the more susceptible or not susceptible you are to this kind of pollution.
As long as we can go in the house or in the car and crank up that AC, we seem to be oblivious to it.
Well, I think that's important refuge, and during these times they have these emergency heat shelters where people with lung problems can go that don't have the air conditioning. or the other way to clean their air. And I think that's important for society to provide. But you're right. We tend to bury our heads a little bit and not think about what's happening outside because it may not affect all of us. We work inside, for example, or work in our homes. But those people that are outside, the workmen and the power lines, and people that are outside cutting grass, really could be suffering from the toxic effects of pollution and ozone.
Jeff, I was born and raised my family in southwestern Pennsylvania. So I've been here all my life. I can never remember riding the temperature humidity roller coaster for so long, and it isn't even August yet. I mean, these past 2 weeks have just been almost unbearable. I'm aware of what UVA is, but I've not heard of UVB. Can you explain any of that?
Well, when we talk about different types of radiation from the sun, there's toxic radiation that, as I said earlier, the ozone layer can filter out. But all of these things are based on the wavelength of the sun rays that are hitting us and whether they can penetrate the skin and cause mutation. So it's really a factor of the lethalness of causing mutations, altering our DNA, if you will, to cause skin cancer. Skin cancer is the number one cancer that humans have. So it's certainly out there. We know the number one reason for it is sun exposure. There's no doubt, there's no question to that 90% of those people that get skin cancer are in areas where the sun is. They've been exposed to it, whether on their hands or their foreheads or their ears, and sooner or later see a dermatologist, and hey, that's a type of skin cancer. Now, we're very fortunate that the most aggressive type skin cancers are rare, but they also are related to the sun, like melanoma and other more serious ones that can cause death. But typically, the basal cell and the squamous cell cancers that we see related to skin cancer are generally curable or at least manageable. But it all goes back to the fact that the sun gives us life. There's no doubt about it, but long-term exposure to it can cause problems, and we have to be aware of that and dress accordingly. We have to wear sunscreen that can block that and clothing that can block the sun. And we have to avoid being out in the high heat of the day if you can. You don't want to be in with the direct sunlight, whether going out in the early morning or evenings, if you like to exercise, would be the best way to avoid that direct exposure.
Mm-hmm. Well, a personal side, my mother passed away at the age of 58 from melanoma. I am one of those fair-skinned young boys who doesn't tan. I freckle, and I've got 600,000 freckles at last count. I go to the dermatologist once a year to get them all checked out. They say it's looking good, but I just can't stop those freckles no matter how much sunscreen I put on.
Right, and then everybody's skin tone and textures are different, and you are more susceptible, generally speaking, those people with the lighter skin relative to withstanding the sun's radiation. So you're going to see a dermatologist on an annual basis is critical to catch things early. So it's the alternative is not being here, Mike.
Right.
So your mom did a good job getting you here, and it's up to you to stay here.
Right. And there are other risks as well: high blood pressure, diabetes, asthma. There are also warnings about those illnesses in terms of sun exposure.
Yeah, well, it's not only sun exposure; it's some of those medications that people take for depression, diabetes, or as we get older, heart disease can interact with the sun. So that's not a good thing. Mm-hmm. We know people, when you go out into the sun, your metabolism tends to increase, you tend to sweat. But if you're taking certain medications or have certain conditions, you may not sweat, meaning your pores just don't respond as well to having water or perspiration go on your skin. And if you don't sweat and naturally relieve the heat, you can easily get heat stroke or other things that are more serious related to heat. Excessive heat is still the number one related cause of death in the United States. Mm. So, we talk about weather and we talked about risk. We know about pollution, but heat is actually the biggest lethal killer acutely for people in America as far as a weather-related problem, more than drowning and other floods and things like that. So we have to be careful when we get older, if we have medical conditions or certain medications, that we avoid the direct sunlight and try to take measures to protect ourselves.
All right. Yeah, when we return from a short break, we'll continue our conversation with Jeff Bost and talk about how we can gain an advantage with the 4 pillars on the St. Barnabas Radio Network.
I'm Patty.
And I'm Bob. We're retired, and we live at St. Barnabas in the Village.
We used to have a house.
Lived in it for 40 years.
Raised our kids.
But it became too much. The upkeep, the stairs.
Moving seemed like such a hassle. We didn't even know where to start, so we didn't.
Until we met Cindy at St. Barnabas.
She talked us through our options.
Yeah, and she helped us with our move and all the arrangements.
There was so much stuff. Who knew we had 3 fondue pots?
But she made it easy.
So easy.
Now we enjoy ourselves.
Golf, the pool, new friends, shuttles to where we want to go.
The pub and the food.
So good.
There wasn't a long-term commitment or any large fees.
And they have a healthcare system on campus with doctors if we need it. The kids really like that.
The kids like to come and eat with us.
There's an easier, worry-free way to retire at the Village at St. Barnabas. Come visit us for a free and informative counseling session and personal tour.
I can't believe you waited so long.
I can't believe you waited so long.
Visit stbarnabashealthsystem.com or call 724-443-0700. This is the Best of Beaver County radio show on the St. Barnabas Radio Network. I'm Mike Romigh. We have a fascinating conversation going on with Jeff Bost, a neurosurgical certified physician assistant. We've been talking about heat. We've been talking about ozone. So many things that we're dealing with nowadays. Summertime temperatures and heat and humidity, sweating, sunburn, freckles, the whole ball of wax. And we wanted to spend a little time talking about reducing those risks, focusing on our health and increasing our awareness to the attributes of the 4 pillars. Jeff, you have the key to the 4 pillars. What is that all about?
Well, I have to give credit to my partner and longtime colleague, Dr. Joseph Maroon. Dr. Maroon is a neurosurgeon at the University of Pittsburgh and is a guest on this show and many others talking about wellness. We actually have our own wellness show called Living Well on the radio station on Saturday mornings, where Dr. Maroon and I discuss healthy living topics. And again, we describe what we talk about as the 4 pillars. And 4 meaning there's 4 different things, not to say that that's exclusive to 4, but the pillars are the things that you can live healthy by. And we've discussed this over the years, and one of them is one of the ones that we just talked about in the first half, was avoiding toxins and pollutions and other things that can cause things like cancer or precipitate or make worse heart disease or diabetes. Avoiding toxins, whether it's pollution or toxic food or toxic water. And stress is another toxin that we must avoid. Excessive stress in our environment. Stress is really one of those, what we call mind killers. It actually kills part of the brain where memory cells are made. And so excessive stress is something that can deteriorate our health and do the opposite of wellness, make our health worse. So the idea of using an adequate diet, a healthy diet, avoiding lots of carbohydrates, eating good fats, lean proteins, diet is part of that. And then finally, exercise. We've talked a lot about exercise, but not just exercise, just walking. I read something that if you walk 30 minutes a day, about half of diabetes, type 2 diabetes, would not exist in America. So the idea that walking as a preventative medicine, instead of the doctor prescribing you a baby aspirin a day or some sort of diabetic medication, he might or she might prescribe walking 30 minutes a day. Wouldn't that be amazing in our society? But we're always going to the doctor or going to the healthcare professional after we have the problem, after we notice that, our vision is bad, our kidneys aren't working well, and that meant years of probably having elevated blood sugar or diabetes. So what we're talking about when we talk about the 4 pillars is prevention and maintaining wellness with those 4 things: exercise, diet, avoiding stress, and toxins. Those are the things that we've settled on. There's certainly other things that people can talk about, but we found those four to be very important in keeping yourself well and living longer.
So, how cognizant should we be to the best way to correct some of those issues like dizziness, bad headache, rapid pulse?
Well, those are medical problems that, those kind of things, you want to be aware of. If you're having dizziness, especially as we just discussed earlier about the heat, it might be as simple as dehydration and go get some water. Dizziness can also be very serious, and in our field could indicate something like a brain tumor. So obviously you'd want to go to the doctor. So the medical part, if you have a medical condition, headaches, for example, can be as benign as just a stress-related headache or something significantly worse. But when you have medical problems, you do have to see a medical doctor. The idea that we're discussing primarily is prevention, using the diet to prevent that, trying to avoid diabetes by not eating so many sweets. I think we've told you in the past that, hundreds of years ago, we only ate about a teaspoonful of sugar a year. Now we eat about 150 pounds of sugar a year per person in America. So, we've significantly changed our diet and our level of exercise that have brought a whole host of what we call chronic disease, heart disease, lung disease, Alzheimer's disease, arthritis, diabetes. These are all what we see so many of our seniors have due to a lifetime of poor choices. And again, we're not pointing fingers at somebody. We're just saying there's an alternative. And people didn't know the alternatives. They used to have doctors smoking on television and telling you it was good to smoke. We certainly now know that's wrong. So we now have the information to tell people there's a right way to live healthy, and that's important to get the word out.
Yeah. Is there any, in terms of hydrating, you talk about that quite a bit, but some people think that if they're drinking sport drinks or caffeinated beverages or a number of other things. My colleague here has a sports drink with him now. And but is there any replacement for water? I mean, these caffeinated drinks, these high energy drinks, are they helping you in terms of trying to keep you hydrated?
Well, the two things that are most important is the water itself, because we sweat water, and along with that sweat goes out salts. So we call those electrolytes, potassium, sodium. They are also part of what we lose when we sweat. So if we're sweating, and we need to have that replenished, both water and electrolytes. But other things like, they put different things, amino acids and caffeine and other chemicals that are not necessarily what our body requires for exertion and activity. Now, if we're sitting in our desk and having those sports drinks, a lot of them have a high sugar content, which is probably not healthy. And caffeine in excess can cause a rapid heart rate and other medical problems that are probably not healthy as well. So again, I can point my finger at a lot of people. A lot of people do that. I certainly drink caffeine myself. Is sports drinks all bad? I would say no, but everything in moderation, Mike. We have to remember that, living on this day in and day out is going to have an effect. Water, if you need it, you should drink it.
Okay. We're talking with Jeff Bost, and we're talking about 4 pillars. We're talking about hydration. We're talking about ozone. So many different issues going on here that affect our daily lives. Jeff, I'm a product of the 60s and 70s, and so, I had heard about hallucinogenic mushrooms in those years, and, it was a bad thing to get involved with. You were taking trips and psychedelics and all that stuff, and it ruined a lot of people's lives. But now I'm reading articles that indicate hallucinogenic mushrooms as a prescription medicine, and it's having a positive effect on people, especially with PTSD.
Well, one I'm going to give you a disclaimer here. First of all, mushrooms and the chemicals that are in the mushrooms that are what we call psychedelic mushrooms and having mind-altering effects are certainly not approved by the FDA. That said, there are certainly hundreds, if not thousands, of studies run in major institutions and hospitals and medical centers across the country and the world looking at the potential benefits. So it isn't, you don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater, meaning these products may end up eventually being very beneficial. And what they're seeing in some of this early research is the fact that they can have, on some people, profound altering effects as far as rewiring the brain. And when I say rewiring the brain, that goes directly to a number of conditions, and you mentioned PTSD, where the brain becomes rewired. And we know some things a lot of people know or have heard of post-traumatic stress disorder, and some of the effects of that. Someone, for example, who may have been in a combat situation and they come home and they hear a loud bang or a noise, immediately they think that they're under attack and hide or jump up or do something very hyperactive. And these are because the brain has been rewired due to the chronic stress and trauma that they received in combat. And whether that's a battered wife or whether it's a combat soldier or a policeman or other first responder who's been on a horrific trauma that they've seen or witnessed, these things can rewire the brain, meaning that pathways in the brain, actual neurons, have changed their location, and so that it's not the way they were before. They've actually changed. So a lot of people that think of mental health problems think, well, you can just snap out of it. You know, it's something that you have the power of. Well, that is true, but you have to change the patterns of the brain as well. And what they're looking at is these psychedelics is, I'm not going to use the word wrongly, but I would say they're trying to find a shortcut, if you will, to rewire the brain using these psychedelic chemicals, meaning they want to try to rewire the brain to eliminate or reduce the wiring that is going on associated with things like PTSD and other types of trauma, depression that people might have with mental health problems. So it is definitely an exciting topic. There's a lot of research going on. I would not recommend someone go out and pluck a mushroom in the field and expect a benefit. If they did that, they got the wrong idea of our conversation. Okay. But there are definitely a lot of interesting things going on with the chemicals in these types of fungus.
Wow, we're always learning something, and the education continues. And Jeff, you add so much to it by coming on the show as often as you do, and Dr. Maroon, and just bringing us this information, this cutting-edge information that can help us live longer and healthier lives. And we certainly do appreciate the work that you, Dr. Maroon, and everyone at St. Barnabas does. Thank you so much for being with us again.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.
All right. And thank you for taking the time to listen to us or watch us on Facebook Live for our weekly interviews on the Best of Beaver County. Jeff Bost, our guest this morning, is a neurosurgical certified physician assistant. I'm Mike Romigh. Again, this is the Best of Beaver County on the St. Barnabas Radio Network. Be safe and stay healthy.
Falling in love is one thing. Having anxiety about falling is a whole different subject. If you or a family member are concerned about falling, and yes, either up or down the stairs, or maybe even out of bed, St. Barnabas has a special message and some ideas just for you. Years of experience in working with people who are prone to falls has given St. Barnabas special expertise in this area. Call them at 724-443-0700 and learn about ways that you can begin to feel more confident and safe, including suggestions that you can implement right now into your daily routine. Call St. Barnabas at 724-443-0700. For many years now, St. Barnabas has been helping people fall, in love that is, with their new, better life, a longer life, a risk-free life. Call St. Barnabas now at 724-443-0700 or visit stbarnabashealthsystem.com and learn more about living longer and better.
Thank you for listening to the Best of Beaver County. St. Barnabas is pleased to have provided content and sponsorship for the program. Tune in this Sunday at 11:30 for an encore presentation of today's program on Beaver County Radio. And next Thursday at 11 for another edition of the Best of Beaver County on WBVP, WMBA, and 99.3 FM. Beaver County Radio's news source, 95.7 and 99.3 FM, along with 1230 WBVP, 1460 WMBA, and streaming at beavercountyradio.com. Here's Frank Sparks.
And good morning. Today's forecast is calling for a chance of scattered showers and thunderstorms throughout the day today. High's going to be up to 86 degrees. We'll have a complete Beaver County Radio weather forecast coming up for you right after we have this look at news. Schools from across Beaver County and those chosen to protect the students at the schools helped make a recent pair of safety seminars successful. AM Beaver County's Matt Durzik has more on the story from the Commissioner's work session at the Beaver County Courthouse.
At the Commissioner's work session on Wednesday, District Attorney David Lozier spoke about the positive turnout at two recent school safety seminars held at CCBC.
We had 130 people attend the first session on the 19th. We had 108 attend the second session yesterday, the 26th. Between the two sessions, we had all 44 school buildings in the county, all school districts, all parochial schools, all charter schools, a number of other agencies, and even the Catholic Diocese and school districts from outside of Beaver County attended. We had representation from the bulk of our police departments that all have schools in their jurisdictions. The substance of the program was excellent.
For full details on yesterday's work session, check out the story at beavercountyradio.com. For Beaver County Radio News, I'm Matt Durzik.
Pennsylvania State Police in Butler reported via release that a 19-year-old man is accusing his great-uncle of sexually abusing him when he was 9 years old and lasting for about a 5-year period until he was 14. Troopers said in the release that Perry Malak Heyman, a retired Catholic priest, allegedly assaulted the victim approximately 10 years ago in Center Township, Butler County. Malak Heyman, who would have been between the age of 74 and 79 during the assaults, is currently a resident of Beckley, West Virginia, and a retired Catholic priest of St. Francis de Sales Catholic Parish in Beckley. He is facing criminal charges, including involuntary deviant sexual intercourse, corruption of a minor, and indecent assault, as troopers continue to investigate. PennDOT is announcing lane restrictions on Route 68 and Industry will occur today and tomorrow, weather permitting. Single-lane alternating traffic will occur over the Norfolk Southern Railroad Bridge near Barkley Hill Road. Crews from Macon Engineering Sophist Company will be conducting bridge inspection work.